Do you remember that time in anime when everything was a rom-com of some sort? No matter what the story was, there had to be a love interest or a heroine in it. This still permeates today, but there was a time when it was the catalyst for every show. Vampire plus Rosary, little fan servicey, Baka and Test, just a great show, And of course the list goes on, but right around this very same time, those anime started to dry up heavily, being replaced by edgier, more over 9,000 type of shows, around the 2019 to 2020 mark. But there's one in recent memory that rekindled the spark for rom-coms and romance stories to the whole 9 yards, and that is this person and this image. A short stack with short hair and the definition of short stack. Anime. She is 20 years old or something. Sure. Anyways, simply put, I've seen this person everywhere around that time period, and I completely misunderstood what the show was. Thought it was like just a normal, nice story about these two people coming together, but I came to find out I was pretty wrong. Uzaki Wants to Hang Out is that. It's one of the names that actually hits truest to the mark. Girl who looks like this, short stack. She's in college and sees an old friend slash acquaintance who always has this menacing look on his face and basically scares everybody off. He also happens to be a loner slash introvert and he keeps to himself pretty consistently. She sees this and then embarks on the journey slash goal to keep him company. Hence the name, Uzaki Wants to Hang Out, because she is constantly pestering what is essentially this loner boy. And the story is a simple rom-com about these people growing closer together and all of those things. But this show does some really, really cool things, but ultimately I really want to talk to you guys at the very end about the thing that I think it kind of misses, but also how every show that precedes this show nails, because I think they learned from this show. Anyway, but as I said, the story is pretty simple in that way. All we're seeing is the daily life and hangouts of Sakurai and Uzaki. These are hard to say in sequel. We're gonna call it Short Stack and Loner Boy from now on. Jesus Christ. It's too hard for me to stop and have to process the name again. I'm sorry I'm like this. Now, who are these characters? Well, the Short Stack is a feisty, kind of poking and teasing kind of personality for a female type, which is fucking awesome because we don't see too many of them. And if it is, it's this yandere annoying, not yandere, tsundere bullshittery, which I'm not a fan of, or at least I'm exhausted by, I should say. Whereas this one's quite fun. It's more of a teasing, poking fun at someone kind of thing. I'm sure we all had female friends like this, which is just someone who you can actually be on the same level with, poke fun at, not hold back, these great things. The dude, however, is, to me, far more just like, I don't know. Like, to be honest, he's kind of the one where I'm like, why? I don't know. He seems like largely just like a very basic grump, basically. But he's also, I think, the reason why so many people connect with this character is because he is just like, I'm pretty content and happy with being just by my lonesome. I know some people aren't, but I find it fine. I can find and entertain myself to no end. I mean, this is, I think, kind of one of the truer, beautiful, like, emotional points in the story, which is, yeah, you might be comfortable being alone, but deep down, people still want to be alone with someone still around you. It's a weird thing. Like, you might be introverted and exhausted by people, but there is still this deep human longing that so many people have. You might be good at being alone, but if you could be alone and feel energized by being by yourself, but with another person, that sounds blissful, you know? Someone to basically keep you company. And I'm gonna cut to the chase here. I think the core of what makes this show special and what the kind of like overall consensus is, and when you know it, it makes the show better, is that this show revolves around this idea, and it's constantly reinforced through situations where the two main characters will be kind of fighting at each other, they'll be poking fun, they'll be slugging it out in a weird verbal way, this and that, back and forth, but at no possible point do they ever even possibly think that they're not going to be friends, that they're not going to be together, that they're going to drift apart. It's this feeling of like, oh, we can bicker, we can go back and forth, we can say some things, maybe hurt each other's feelings at times, maybe misunderstand things constantly, but there's never even a single doubt that I'm not going to be by your side. I'm not going to be the person that's still going to be here when this is all said and done. And that is a beautiful thing within romance, love, whatever you want to call it. Maybe that's naive for me to say, but that's what I seen, and I thought it was wonderful. This idea that even after every spat, after every little poke and jab, they always come back to baseline, which is, tomorrow this is going to dissolve and we're going to figure it out and we're going to still remain friends and we're going to still like move through life together. regardless of if the romance thing ever happens, that kind of friendship, that kind of like loyalty, it always feels like, is extremely special and sweet. And I think that's kind of the antithesis of the show, is like, oh, if you even have slight emotional feelings and you have that a partner like that, or a person in your life like that, then it seems like kind of an inevitability. Sorry, words are hard. But yeah, and one of the things this show does really, really well is the characters around the main two are also endearing. One of the side stories is that both friends of both the girl and the dude are pushing towards these characters hanging out, resolving their issues, becoming a couple. To a hilarious extent. There's a girl who's like a closeted weirdo, not quite kind of perv, but more weirdo than perv, but she's lovely and weird and freakish and honest, which is sweet. And then the main character's dude friend is just like the best bro man ever, just the best bro dude, and they're sweet. And then the old man who's like just crisp, and they like people watching basically, because that's why he has a coffee. It's just so cute. There's so many characters here. I don't want to spoil too much, but there's so many characters here I think you'll dig into. By the way, quick pause. If you don't know what we're doing right now, this is a series where I'm just like talking to you about the core aspects of the show, and if at any point you find this interesting, go watch the show. That's kind of answers the question, should you watch? I'm trying to tell you the core fundamentals of the show, so you can make a choice whether you can watch or not. I've talked about how much I adore the characters. I've talked about how much the emotional resonance of the show, which is these people constantly coming together and spending time with one another, is awesome. I do find, yeah, we might as well get into it now. Okay, so my big issue with the show, and I think it stems, and I would like to, this could just be my internal feelings on it because I've watched so many other shows, because I've watched the show that came before all the shows that I've watched. So I've watched My Dress Up Darling, I've watched Love is War, I've watched Miss Auden is Undecipherable, whatever that one's called, and all these ones, Shikimori's Not Just a Cutie, all these other rom-coms that are really, really unique. And this one, I think, came before all of them, or at least it was in the popular zeitgeist before all that, right? And one thing that I noticed, even having watched season 2, which, by the way, there's a season 2, and a little dicey on when the season 3 is going to happen, because it's a little bit behind on manga copies. But yeah, if we break down the story, this story feels very, I can't like actually understand or dig into the characters that we're given. I get them on a surface level. It's almost kind of like Seinfeld or Friends, where like you only ever get the surface level, maybe a little bit of depth, but mostly surface level of what these characters are, so that you can easily predict what they're going to do in the show. So you don't really get to go into, like, let me ask you this. For people who have seen the show, how much do you know about the main character? How much do you understand him? If I gave you a premise, do you know, or like a question, or a situation that he'd be in, could you tell me how they would react and why they would do that? Can you tell me about their background and why they are the way they are? The show doesn't really have that, and to just kind of cut to the chase, shows like My Dress Up Darling do. The main character in My Dress Up Darling, we can look at his past constantly. His whole character is embodied in this kind of struggle with trying to figure out how to be worthy or to do this ideal that he has, make these beautiful dolls and outfits, etc. So you understand who he is, and you understand where he's coming from. You understand the kind of person, the soul behind the character, so you can predict what he's going to do before he does it, which is an amazing testament to the depth and understanding of a character. I don't feel like I understand any of these characters really. Uzaki-Chan or Uzaki, I don't really, I get her, she's like an energetic goofball, likes to poke fun and tease, which is nice, but I don't know how she became that way. I don't know what she'd do in a situation necessarily. Like, I don't get it necessarily. It's tough to describe. Same thing with the main character. The main character I feel like is much worse. The main dude character feels like a kind of a, he has like big emotional, physical tweaks or tics that we never really get to understand why. And I feel like that's something the show doesn't really do a great job at. So I don't feel like I know the characters. I feel like I'm just watching a classic rom-com. Which is why I would suggest to anyone who should watch the show, if you enjoy the classic rom-com of like, it's the situations don't necessarily make the most sense, like their actions about them sleeping over and drinking and their hesitation and all that stuff just seems like it's plot armor kind of put in the story, even though it doesn't really make the most sense, it's just kind of there to kind of prolong this thing. Same thing with the characters, they don't necessarily go into why they are how they are, it's just kind of like, no, here are some characters that you like, in different situations, in different hangouts, in different environments. which is also fun. It's just, I hunger for the feeling of understanding these characters more. And to actually, honestly, a lot of the situations I kind of ran by, but the situations don't feel like they connect, meaning like they feel super unrealistic, odd. You know, like, you made this choice, why? Okay, this is happening now, sure. And again, you guys are probably laughing because this is an anime. It doesn't need to make sense. A lot of the rom-com stories are nonsensical. Sleeping Beauty, guy just comes up, stranger, kisses her, bang, marriage, crazy. These stories don't need to make sense. Stories are crazy. Rom-coms, romance stuff, bad shit from the cuff. Okay, I get it, yeah. But that is where I think all the other shows I just mentioned really nail that aspect of like the rom-com aspect of it. Love is War does a really good job about going back into the character's past, putting them in situations that are like pretty different and high stakes to where you get to see an aspect of them and understand them greater. Same thing with My Dress Up Darling does this really well, constantly going back to these characters' life, and then also just really seeing the emotional hit. Like, I guess that's another way I could put it. Uzaki Wants to Hang Out, the anime, is very much a show that feels very surface level rom-com. Like, it's fun, it's goofy, it's playful, but it never ever gets like super, super dark. And like, this person is really struggling with this aspect of themselves, which it doesn't need to be. But this is a thing that I want to know, because it helps you get greater depth and sense for this character. Even in a goofy show like Love is War, the situations are so crazy and absurd that you get to develop that character, I guess. And that's something I crave from this show, but I think that's the lesson that the animators and maybe even the manga writers maybe picked up on. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe the timeline of all this is weird. But I just find that all those other shows seem to really take really, really good care of like developing the depth of the character. And I find that's the one thing I kind of craved in the show, but never really got. Now, granted, I did binge watch both seasons in like the span of, I think, 4 days. So I did gobble them all up because it's easy to watch. It's a surface level fun thing like that. By the way, I do think this is a fun rom-com type of show that you should watch if you like those. But as far as the comedy aspect of the show, it's not a very, how do I put it? Laugh out loud, like Love is War is so goofy and playful and absurd that you're gonna be laughing your ass off. It's weird, it's hilarious. But this show is more of a smile. Like, you're gonna be smiling at the situations and the environment and the wholesomeness of it all, but not necessarily laugh out loud. So it's not as much of a comedy than it is just a nice, wholesome package, I guess I could put it that way. But hopefully that makes sense. Again, I did like the show. The only thing I felt like it was kind of, I didn't get was the resonance of like understanding the depth of characters. I feel like they were very, very surface level, which is fine, but just something that I found in shows like My Dress Up Darling and even shows like Miss Ahadin is Unreadable. God, these names. All had that understanding for me to understand the characters, which I liked a lot. But I also like the just simplicity of the show and it being just kind of a wholesome package. Also, the character designs are fun and hilarious. So all in all, that's as much as I can ramble about the core points that I think make this show worth watching. Season 2 is available. You should watch that. It's ready to rip. Season 3 might be a little bit far off because they're running out of source material, but it still could come pretty soon here. I think they're about to finish enough to where they'd have source material, but it doesn't necessarily mean they'll run it through and make an anime of it, because then they'd be really like neck and neck, which could be a little rough. But alas, ladies and gentlemen, thank you kindly for your time. Hopefully I can talk to you again, and goodbye, my friend.